Holy nostalgia.
On today's episode of Nostalgia 101, we welcome back documentary filmmaker Scott Barber to talk all about what he's been up to since the last time and his new project coming up, Game Changers. All right, everyone, welcome to Nostalgia Test Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Dissinger, here in LA, and I'm here with my longtime friend and co-host there in Long Island, Manny Coelho. Manny, back on the mic. Manny.
Back on the mic. How long has it been, dude? I mean, nobody knows this because behind the scenes, you're dropping episodes,
dropping them.
So we had so many in the bank that you were able to drop a lot while you've been away. Yeah. I went on an entrepreneurship boot camp show, which I can't wait to come out. I was excited. Like, we almost canceled this.
Yeah.
Because I've been so busy after I got back from being away in Portugal, because I went on a vacation with my wife, who thank you to my wife for planning the greatest vacation ever. I was off the grid. I was unplugged. We brought our dog and we were lazy for 10 straight days in Portugal, in the south of Portugal on the beach.
Sounds amazing.
It was amazing.
Sounds amazing.
But now we're back.
Yeah, we're back.
I'm excited, man. I was excited. I was editing before, and then I was like, no, I can make this happen. I mean, it's 10 o'clock at night here, but I was like, I can make what we were doing. We're hanging out. We're talking about nostalgia stuff. And then we get to talk to Scott, which we haven't, like, that episode was, it feels like it was yesterday. But it was a while ago at this point. And I've seen, like, the documentary is, people talk about it. I'm like, oh, I know that guy. I actually interviewed him for our podcast. And he's like, no way. I'm like, yeah. I was like, dude, that was a great time. I was like, or when somebody talks about Nickelodeon, I'm actually like, yo, have you seen the Orange Years? And they're like, what? I'm like, yo, you got to check it out. Yeah. Like, oh, man, it sounds really good. So, like, really awesome to have Scott back on. So I can't wait for this episode to 101. We're going to school, Dan.
That's it. We're going to school. And just introduce Scott Barber. Scott, thank you so much for being on the podcast again. Welcome back. We were talking about this before we hit record too. Like, we all look like we way more professionally. When I'm going to try to release the video of our first episode, it's all earbuds and crazy logos and just like sitting there. But that episode was so much fun at the Orange Years. But now welcome back.
Were we during COVID? Was that during COVID? Like, straight up, like right after COVID or during?
I think it might have been early on. Yeah.
It was almost right after, because I do believe I was at my house, but I was standing over there, which was a whole other, you can't see because this is green screen. But yeah. Right. Wow.
That was crazy. I was sitting on my couch during that episode. So now
things have changed. And look at Scott, by the way, you did a perfect job. I don't know if you did this for purpose, but the nostalgia test logos on both me and Dan, and then you look like you've combined all of it in your backyard, in the back of your desk over there. So it's great. I love that hue, that purple hue.
It's the same color, huh?
Yeah,
similar,
definitely.
Same color scheme.
Yes.
But Scott, thank you so much. Welcome back, and we're excited to have you on. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming back.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited to be back. I'm so glad that you reached out to me. Last time was so much fun. I was waiting for, like, what am I going to come back for? Like, I got to have something. So finally, this seems like a perfect match.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what you've been up to since the Orange Years? And if anyone, go back and listen to the Orange Years episode. That episode was just so awesome. Yeah. Go ahead, Scott. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was one of the co-directors and creators of The Orange Years, the Nickelodeon story, which is a documentary film about the origin of Nickelodeon. How did it become this juggernaut? So really, when they got to SpongeBob, that's when they were a bona fide, like, that's their Mickey Mouse. They are as big as anyone else. So we kind of show how they got there. And there was a really awesome lady named Geraldine Laybourne who was in charge of all that stuff, all the way from you can't do that on television to all that. That's such a radically different time period, it feels like, but that was all under her watch. And a funny thing is, I keep getting these messages, now there's this other Nickelodeon docu-series called Quiet on Set. Yeah. And I keep getting people going, man, I saw your doc, man. That is nuts. I'm like, dude, no, that's not me. That's not mine.
I was thinking about that. Yeah. And I was like, I wonder how Scott feels about that, because you just said it was it was up to all that. Yours was up to all that, and then it seemed like things got
Yeah.
after.
So
Like, after
they really
people
don't,
left.
yeah, they don't contradict one another. It's not like mine is saying everything was good and theirs is saying everything was bad, because they're two different time periods. Yeah,
That's
mine
right.
like goes from like 1980 all the way to 2000, and theirs kind of starts at 2000 into the, you know, into the 2010s with, you know, all that after it was already big. Keenan and Kel and all that were already big, and then they're moving on to like the Amanda Show and Drake and Josh and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it does kind of seem like that. Like after Geraldine Laybourne left, it kind of, I guess, went off the rails behind the scenes anyway.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, so how do you answer? Do you just say like, no, that's not mine. You should just watch that. Like, you just like move on. Let's move on. Mine's a little more lighthearted. Like,
I'm always like, yeah, no, that's not mine. But it's funny because it's people that have been like, yeah, dude, I totally saw your doc. It was really good. And then they're like, yeah, I saw it here. I'm like,
yeah,
you should have known that wasn't mine. Friends of mine, that is. You know, I got friends and family that I'm like, you should have known that wasn't mine.
Yeah,
you know?
So it's funny you say that, because like, so I have to bring this up at the brewery, right? I'm always like, there's people that come in and they just don't know that they're at a brewery, or they don't even know what we have, even though there's like, it's all listed and stuff. And I say to my bartenders, you have to no one reads, no one is listening to you when they're talking. They're in their own world. So like, even this is your friends, like, that know that you wouldn't like, you would have said something about this. It's like, but yet that's why I no longer take offense of things, because it's just like, I mean, I've had the brewery for 8 years, and I still get people who live in Farmingdale are like, how long have you been there? You just started, right? And I was like, no, we've been here for 8 years. It's like, I walk by this place all the time. I had no idea. And it's just like, you walk by and you look in and you don't go like, this is a brewery. It says Lithology Brewing Company on the sign out front. All you have to do is look up. But like, so like, I get it, man. That it's just like, oh, all they're hearing is Nickelodeon. It's a documentary.
That's right.
Oh, Scott did that. It's Scott's documentary.
A funny thing that on that same note there's this project I'm working on, Game Changers. I know we'll talk to that talk about that later.
Oh, go ahead.
We have a Kickstarter. Well, a Kickstarter we'll talk about. But you know, it's a docu-series and it has Phil Moore from Nick Arcade on it, you know, and I knew that would be amazing because it's about retro video games. So I was kind of like, man, if there's a show about retro video games with Phil Moore, that's just going to be so awesome. And I feel like people would be really excited about that. And so we have this Kickstarter video that we put, and it's Phil. He's like, hey, I'm Phil Moore. You probably remember me from Nick Arcade. I got this new project. It's a docu-series about retro video games. And so we post that all the time. And there's always comments like, oh, I remember this guy. What's he up to now?
It's like
that's what this video is. Like, did you watch any of the video?
No, they're not watching it at all.
They're not.
They're not watching it at all. They watched it for the first 4 seconds.
Yeah.
And they wanted to comment right there. It's like, watch the whole day. I watched it. I'm like, I see what he's up to.
Yeah.
You guys have all these episodes planned. You can vote on the game, and then the game could be the one that we do the season on.
Unbelievable.
I saw it. I read it. I was like, before I comment, I like I'm into social media. I do social media as marketing. I know that people only do 4 seconds. Like, it's like,
Well,
so
that's
crazy.
And that's how I saw it. Like, I was like on Instagram and I was like, oh, what's this? Oh, it's really amazing. Just checking up on what people are up to. And I was totally hooked right away. I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds like an amazing idea. And it's like right up our alley and what we talk about. And yeah, I would look, you know, what sparked it for you? Like the game changers, like brought this idea out in you to kind of go, let's just like try to jump into this.
Yeah, you know, after I did the Orange Years, I did a documentary called This is GWAR about the band / performance artist collective known as GWAR, that a lot of people think it's a heavy metal band that wears costumes, and that's really not it at all. And that was really fun. Because I got to work with them. You know, with the Orange Years, I wasn't working with Nickelodeon. We were just doing that independent. And luckily, the majority of the people that we interviewed aren't at Nickelodeon anymore. I don't think any of them really were. But this was great to get to work with them and get to kind of go into some of the harder stuff, because people aren't afraid of this giant corporate monstrosity that might hurt them. I think a lot of people were afraid to say anything negative, which it's not like there was a lot of negative stuff. The Orange Years was a positive thing, but This Is GWAR was really fun. It was really successful. The Orange Years ended up getting on Hulu, which is really cool. That's, I think, when people started to really find out about it. Like, we could look at all the people talking about it when it was just out on transactional video on demand. Then once it was there, people kind of thought it was a new thing, which that's understandable. But This Is GWAR, we debuted it at Fantastic Fest, and it got on AMC Plus. So after that, and I teamed up with a friend of mine named Casey Pinkston, who has a really great documentary also on Hulu called Red Dog, and another guy, Bill Parks, who was a producer on both Orange Years and GWAR. He has a couple of films also under his belt that are different. So between all of us, we had like 4 or 5 films that were, out there. So we were like, you know what? We've done all of these by ourselves. We had no big company or even medium-sized company helping us. We just got the money however we could and made it, and then hoped that we sold it at the end. And we always did. And so we kind of said, we could kind of flip the script now and present ideas to like the Netflixes and the Hulus and the Peacocks, just come up with an idea and present it to them, and then hopefully get to make it for them from the beginning. Like you see there's documentaries that are on Netflix, but then there's like Netflix originals that Netflix made. We were trying to get on board with that. Our good friend Tommy Avalone, who was a producer on This Is GWAR, he did that. He's a little further along. He's done I Am Santa Claus, Bill Murray stories that was on Netflix. And he did that for Peacock. He sold Peacock an idea for this Barney documentary, and it's really good. It was actually a docu-series. So we've been trying to do that since This Is GWAR came out. It's crazy that This Is GWAR has been out for a couple of years now. But we started doing that, and it was fun. But I really wanted to work on something. We were putting in just as much work because we'd make these presentations where you make a little pitch video, and then you make a whole presentation, and you get on Zoom with these people and you present it, and they give you feedback and all this stuff. And it's been really fun. And I've learned a whole lot. And I've met a lot of really cool people doing that. But one thing that we kind of found was that everybody, it just kind of sucks not getting to make anything. This is cool to be creative, but it feels like I've been out of the game for a while, and I want to actually shoot and edit, even though I've been working just as hard as I have on these documentaries, on these pitches. But everybody really wants murder right now. Like that's what's cool. That's what's cool and trendy. And I'm kind of to the point, with all that true crime stuff, where I'm kind of like, this feels exploitive at this point. You hear about all these different documentaries and biopics, like the Dahmer one, where the families of the victims are like, please don't make this. You're kind of victim blaming our son, and you're not presenting him right, and we just don't want to relive this, please. And they're like, fuck you, and put it out anyway.
This is like mental. Like you're bringing a PTSD to these people.
It's one
like they're
thing
reliving it.
Totally. If you write a horror film, great, that's awesome. It's not real people, but I feel like it's kind of like, well, instead of actually being creative and writing something, I'll just make a documentary about something that already happened, about this little girl that got chopped up into bits. It's so messed up.
It's so horrible.
I watch some YouTubers and stuff like that are, I like watching paranormal ones, and some of them are paranormal, but then also go into like dark stuff in general. And I remember seeing this guy, and he was kind of laughing at some of this stuff. And that's whenever I kind of had this self-awareness. I was like, I don't want this. Also, it felt like every time I'd have a really good idea with a really solid pitch. We had a really great video. We'd have a great pitch. I really thought it was something good. And it was always the same thing. And they go, this looks really good, but who dies in it? And we're like, well, nobody dies, but it's a really cool story. Cause I like true crime stuff that's like heist type stuff. Like if you've seen the Pez Outlaw or Pepsi Where's My Jet, stuff like that, I think is kind of cool, but it's more fun, you know, almost like an Edgar Wright Baby Driver film, but in documentary form. And so we were pitching some of those, and it's like everybody wants somebody that dies. And it feels like a lot of these documentaries too, they're stretching. They're like, has anybody that was involved in this ever had a cousin of a roommate who killed somebody? They did. Okay, well then let's make that the climax. And so you have a story about Von Dutch, those stupid hats. And then at the very end, they're like, and one guy that worked there for a little while murdered somebody. And it's like, what does that have to do with the rest of the story? You know? And they always do that thing where they tease it at the very beginning in the first episode. They're like, it was this hats, it was this, and no one knew it ended with somebody dying. So you're like, okay, what's that about? You know, and you get there and you're like, that doesn't even have anything to do with the story of this.
The guy got fired.
So
he
much.
was like cleaning the bathrooms. Like,
come on. And so, you know, I'm still having fun. Like, luckily we have partnered up with some people that aren't totally like that. And so we're still pitching stuff and having a good time, but I really wanted to make something, and I wanted to make something that would just be fun, you know, just something I'd have a blast making, and also something that I could make without the help of any overlord at all. You know, not even really an investor, which all the investors I've ever worked with for the projects I have, which they're just people, you know, I haven't ever had to go to a big company. They've been great. They've been fantastic. So I don't mind going to them again, but I just wanted something that I could make, and it could be really good, really high quality, but would be fun. And so I kind of thought, well, what would I like? What would I think is cool? And I kind of thought about it. And then I was like, but what also would have a community that would help support it? Because that's the thing with crowdfunds. You got to have something that has a community. And, you know, I've been I listen to a lot of retro gaming podcasts, a lot of retro gaming YouTube channels, like the Gaming Historian and stuff like that. And so I was like, what about something like that? And we had an experience, I'll call it that, with the people that made the movies that made us in the past. It certainly was a thing that happened. And so, you know, I was just kind of thinking about that. I was like, why has nobody ever done something like that, but about video games, where every episode is about a different video game? There's a really great one on Netflix called High Score. And it's great. It kind of walks you through the history of video games, where one game doesn't really get a lot of spotlight. It's more talking about the movement. Like, they might talk about Mortal Kombat, but it's for like 10 minutes. Or they might talk about the whole first person shooter thing, but they're going through like Wolfenstein, Doom, Duke Nukem, like really fast.
Like what led to this, what led to that,
right,
how things changed.
It's about
They also came out with a Nickelodeon one, not Nickelodeon. Sorry, the Nintendo one recently. Right. It was like a documentary on a documentary series about Nintendo, but it wasn't. I'll tell you, it wasn't great. Sorry for whoever is listening. It wasn't super great. It was it didn't pique my interest long enough. It was just like, okay, I get it. Like, they were stretching some of the episodes. Okay,
yeah.
You know?
That's another thing too. Is it's like, you know, everybody wants series, and when we'd pitch it, they'd be like, can it be a series? Can it be like a 5 or 6? You know, and it feels like so many of these series are like padded they can make as many episodes. It's like, this would have been really good if it was 1 or 2 or maybe 3. But with this, it wouldn't feel padded because every episode would be about a different game.
Yeah,
sure.
And I just thought that'd be a really fun way to do it different, because so many people, like I said, like that High Score, they did such a great job with that format. There's a lot of great YouTubers like the Gaming Historian who does a great job of telling the stories. His production value has just gotten crazy. But it's like, well, presenting it this way, I think would be different, you know, where it's kind of fun. Every episode tells you the story of a different game. So every game gets its due, and it's all games that change that's why it's called Game Changers, a game that changed the game in some way. It might be the hardware, it might be the software, it might be the style, it might just be lots of different things. And so that's what I kind of thought would be really cool. And then I thought about it and I was like, man, if Phil Moore from Nick Arcade would be kind of like the host / narrator, I feel like that would make it really cool. And that would give it, you know, like I was saying, what do you do that's different that other things don't have? And what do you do to make it special? And I thought, you know, in addition to giving every episode a different spotlight on a different game. Giving him Phil Moore would be so cool. Who wouldn't love to see Phil Moore talking about retro video games? You know, we all, he was, you know, he was, for those who don't know, he was the host of Nick Arcade.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. And then after Mark Summers left, you know how Mark Summers was, he wasn't just the host of Double Dare. He was like the Nickelodeon guy. Anytime they just needed a guy to do something, like when they introduced Nickelodeon Studios in Florida, it was Mark Summers doing the countdown. After he left Nickelodeon, it was Phil Moore that did that. He was the one, like when they introduced Nick and all that. And I met him because he was interviewed in the Orange Years, and he was just such a nice, cool guy.
Wow.
And I had talked to him a couple of times since then. And so I kind of decided, I really think I only want to do this idea if Phil Moore will do it with me. And so I messaged him and I was kind of said, this is kind of the idea I want to do. I want to do important games that change the game, you know, like Tomb Raider and Punch Out and Mortal Kombat and Star Fox. Is it something you'd be interested in? Because I haven't worked with him in a capacity like this. Like in the Orange Years, he was just interviewed. He wasn't like working on it. And so I was really hoping he'd love to do it. And he responded back, you had me at Star Fox. And I was like, okay, I know I reached out to the right guy. I know I reached out to the right guy. So I hit him up and we kind of, at the time, the structure wasn't exactly firm. We were kind of like, what do we do? You know, do we do one on every genre or do we limit it just to games? Like, could we do one on a console or one on like the Power Glove or something like that?
Oh my
just
God.
Anything that changed the game. What do we do? And we kind of decided.
Thing ever.
I know, right? I know. And that's why I think it'd be so much fun to do the Power Glove because it is polarizing. I love stuff like that where Power Glove is.
Didn't we interview somebody that makes toys? He talked about the Power Glove. I thought.
Yeah, I think Matt Nuccio.
Matt brought it.
Yeah,
he brought it up. Was he part of it, or he had something to do with it?
I think
it was
just
something
brought
where
it up,
he
and he
was
said
like,
it was like useless.
Yeah, it was.
He's like it's one of those things
it's
that
considered
like,
a toy that just everybody thought it was going to be this greatest thing, and
it's so interesting because it's one of those things where it is like Americana. You know, you see that glove and it reminds you of the 80s. It reminds you of Nintendo.
Of course.
It seems like it was a big thing. But yeah, anybody that had it, it was awful. I had even a worse thing, though. I had something called U-Force. Do you remember U-Force?
No.
I won a fishing tournament with my dad when I was a little kid, and I got $100, and I was like, oh my God. So, you know, my dad was like, well, you know, you earned it. What do you want? So I bought the U-Force. And for those that don't understand, it looked even better than the Power Glove. And that's kind of what they said on the commercials.
Okay.
And what it was, it looked like, you know, that game Battleship that you used to play when you were a kid, how it kind of opened up like a little briefcase. That's what it looked like. Like imagine Battleship. It opened up and you didn't have to wear a glove. They're like, you don't have to wear a glove or use a zapper. You just use your hands. So it's just, you just are using your hands, and they show people like punching, and that's how they play Punch Out. And they show people like, you know, doing a gun thing with their hand. And that's how you're playing Duck Hunt. And they got people just kind of pretending to drive a car with their hands. And
really
freaking
it was
awesome.
It was like VR before VR.
This thing looks terrible. I'm looking at it.
And it's like, you know, the same way, you know, the Power Glove in the commercials, they show people like punching and stuff and then, like flying. And that's not the way it worked at all.
No.
At all. And so the U-Force was even worse than that. You basically like put your hand in different positions to move like left and right and A, B.
Oh God.
You know, and it just made it like 100 times harder. So luckily,
like,
I was
just
able
want to pick up the damn controller and just play.
That's what I did. Luckily, I was able to take it back, and I got a game called Battle of Olympus. I don't know if you remember that, but it was like it was kind of like a Legend of Zelda clone type thing, but about Greek gods. It's a really fun game. It's a really fun regular Nintendo game. So luckily, I was able to get that. I think I got something else from Toys R Us. But anyway, yeah, I love, you know, the Power Glove. I'm obsessed with stuff like that where it's polarizing, you know, where there's good stuff about it. Like, you know, everyone remembers The Wizard. I love that movie, The Wizard. It's where they
first man.
Super Mario Brothers 3 and that guy Lucas. I love the Power Glove. It's so bad.
It's so bad. There's so many memes and videos of that. Like it like people play that part all the time.
Oh dude.
Did you watch 8-Bit Christmas?
No, with Neil Patrick Harris.
Oh, it was so good. I loved it.
That was so good because it's like Christmas Story, but it takes place
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the 80s when everybody wanted a Nintendo. So like you were watching him instead of the BB gun, it was the Nintendo.
Yeah.
So like he would do
Mm.
anything to get the Nintendo, and like people were
Yeah.
saying like how they were telling parents that Nintendo was rotting kids' brains and kids would like lose their minds. And there was this rich kid who had the Power
everything.
Glove, and he wouldn't let anyone else play, and all his friends were just watching him play, like go like this. I'm like, I had it, I remember, and watching the game. I mean, watching 8-Bit Christmas and watching him play, like he was playing like I think Kung Fu. I don't know what he was doing, but it didn't look fun with the Power Glove.
Yeah.
Like, remember you had to like every once in a while use the directional pad on the Power Glove, and you had to like go like this. What do you got?
I don't know if you could see that, but I've got a Power Glove over there.
No way.
On my,
I see it. It's right there.
I thought moving my camera over there would do it, but I'll go get it. But it doesn't. I just bought one for decoration because you know I think it looks cool and it reminds me of the Wizard. But I didn't want to waste my money on a working one, so I found one that was just for parts on eBay, and I bought it.
Yeah, why get a working one? Like,
I never
like
had
you're right.
That. Yeah, I didn't have the Power
Game
Glove.
Genie?
I loved it.
Remember that thing?
I had that.
Did you have that, Scott? Game Genie? Shut up.
Oh my god!
Yes, I did.
Just pull out the Game Genie like it's right there. Oh my god!
Do I remember? I'm using it right
Scott,
now.
Did you have the Power Pad? Now pull out the Power Pad. Like if like
yeah,
I had the running.
I did have the
thing.
Power Pad.
Did you cheat? Everybody cheated with that one. You found out that all you had to do is jump off.
You gotta jump forever.
Yeah. Or I remember it was almost like the way people I don't know what it's called, twerking, but when people kind of like gyrate their butt really fast, like if you put your hands on something and then just not even lift up your feet, but kind of go like just kind of vibrate them. That's how you could win. I had the Power Pad. That one was actually kind of worked though. It was to me that one was actually fun.
Yeah, that worked.
It worked like it said it did.
Yeah.
But anyway,
go ahead.
All that stuff, you know, I think is cool. You know, all the like even the Game Genie, like we were like, do we do it almost more like 30 for 30 where it's just any sort of video game story that's cool? Like, you know, you're talking about the Game Genie. There's a story behind this where Nintendo sued them because they didn't want it to be a thing. But Sega, so you look at it, it doesn't say Nintendo anywhere on there. It's just by Galoob. But Sega was like, hell yeah, come on. And it's like an official Sega thing.
Oh, and wow.
What I like about they were able to give it an extra feature where you can turn it off and on when you do the Sega Genesis. And I love that because like I'll put it on because I don't have a lot of time for video games. You know, I'm a dad, I'm doing stuff, but I do have a gaming system right here. And
the one that like plays all the different games?
Yeah.
I found that out recently. They're like, oh, it'll play all the different cartridges. I was like, what?
Yeah, mine does Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and Genesis.
Does it have all 4 different things or just one that changes? Like, do you have to insert in a different slot?
Yeah, you insert it in a different slot. Like it's like top loading and it's got, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and Genesis. But it's really cool because I only have to have one thing plugged in. And so like I'll play games every now and then. I'll just put the Game Genie on it just in case. So I'll try not to use it. But if I get to a level, I'm like, screw this. You know, I don't want to learn this game. Like I'm just going to turn it on for a second. But that's because Sega was like, sure. You know, and back in the 90s, you know, Sega had the reputation as being the cooler one. Nintendo might have been the more popular one. But Sega was like, you know, their Mortal Kombat had blood in it. And all their
NHL 94 had blood in it. Like, I remember Nintendo turned into like the Disney, the PG, where when you had Sega, you had games that like, you know, Judge Dredd was on it. Like, you know, like there was like, you know, you didn't play the same game. It's like, was like Toe Jam and Earl a Sega game? Or was that a Nintendo game?
No, that was Sega.
That was
we
Sega.
Played it. We have it.
Oh man, that game was good. Yeah, we played it on
that
our
game
little
is not
console
good. Go back and listen to that episode.
No,
we
that's
were very
true.
angry.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, Scott, I mean, it's so funny because like with this, with game changers, like there are so many things you can do. Like it's almost
Mhm.
and especially with Mortal Kombat, I mean, like I saw that you were talking about Mortal Kombat on the Kickstarter video, and everyone can go
Mhm.
and watch the Kickstarter, so and donate to the Kickstarter. It's in the episode notes
Please.
on website. Yeah, definitely. And like even that, like I didn't. I one of my cousins had Sega, my other cousin had a Nintendo, and so like you had
Mhm.
to know the
Mhm.
code to get the. So there's a lot to even talk about just in Mortal Kombat because it's also
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
first game to like do real people like and record them
Yeah.
as
Right.
actors and then put them in the game. That was like the big thing. It was like, oh my God, these are real
Mhm.
people. That was
Mhm.
the difference between like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, which like Street Fighter 2, like those two games were at the same time. Really,
Yeah.
I
You know,
mean, you got so much that you could work with. It's so awesome. And
you know
like,
what's crazy? I knew a guy who actually tested video games. Like they were so good at
Oh
arcade
wow.
games. And this is the guy that why I went to CBD Post. He was dating my cousin at the time, Richard.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Him and his friend were so good. They came out. They were filmmakers, and that's what I went to school for. And they made
Oh, nice.
a film called Arcadians, and Arcadians was about right before arcade games kind of like stopped being popular because people were able to play
Yeah.
at home,
Home. Yeah.
and they were just like the people that would play with one quarter. Like they were that good. Like they
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
these two guys, they got one of them got mentioned in the Super Nintendo Mortal Kombat because they would basically go and be like, go test these games, which I didn't know is that combos aren't programmed. Combos happen as you keep playing, and like they had to write down all the different combinations they
oh
were doing
Jesus.
as they were testing these
Wow.
games. It was I, like when he told me this, I'm like, so what was your life like? He's like, you'd get put in a room for 6 to 8 hours, and you're just potato chip. Like the company would just feed these. They were young. They were like, I would say 19 to 25, and they were just,
Yeah.
but they were so good hand-eye coordination that they would never lose these games. And they were like, yeah, you're gonna test this game.
Oh
You're
wow.
gonna test this
Wow,
game
that
out
is
and
nuts.
figure out what combos are and stuff like that. It
That's
was
amazing.
nuts. Like I remember him saying it. I'm like, this is a world like the people like do this for a living, and he's like, yeah. And then like
Yeah.
I didn't believe him, and then I watched him play a game. Like I watched him play Super Nintendo Mortal Kombat. He destroyed it, and then his name comes up
Wow.
in the. You have to win the game for his like name to come up as like tester. I was like, that's crazy.
Wow.
That's crazy. But that's like a different type of people who are that
Yeah.
good at games and
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Which also is funny. Are you guys gonna also talk about that, like the arcade? Because like
Mm-hmm.
arcade games are a little bit they're designed differently,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Like they're designed for people to give you quarters.
Yeah. Right. Right.
We had a guy on the
The guy
Cuber,
who
the guy
created Cubert.
who created Cuber,
Yeah,
right?
Warren
So
Davis. Yeah.
that was you tell me you have.
Yeah, there he
That's
This is wild.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like I'm a
wild.
magician here.
We should connect you guys. That
that guy's
he
awesome.
came on. He wrote a book about the making of it,
Wow.
and he talked about how it was his project. It wasn't even supposed to be a game.
It was a
He
coding exercise.
Yeah, it was a coding exercise, and he came up with this
Wow.
idea, and they were like, and then they used somebody else's drawings, and they made
And they
Cubert,
made
and it
Cubert.
was insane. And they were saying it was great because of how great it was as a quarter grab. Like
Yeah,
it
Mm-hmm.
needed to get people to want to continue to
that
give
game
you
was
Yeah.
quarters.
so
So
frustrating.
that's a different way of designing a game versus a
Yeah.
game that's played at home.
Yeah.
Like think about
Totally.
the mindset you have to be at, like that, and also like back then too, you couldn't continue at home.
Right.
You lost,
Right.
you lost, man.
It was over.
That was
Yeah.
like that was over. And then the game change. You'd probably. I mean, I forget what game. What game did you finally get to save?
Maniac
you
Mansion
remember?
on Nintendo. You could save on Maniac Mansion
You could save
because
on the cartridge.
it wasn't. It was not a regular game. That game was ridiculous, and you had to save because there were so many stupid things you had to do.
Mm.
Wouldn't
Really?
save? There would be no point in playing it. Like it was, and it was
Yeah.
on the cartridge. You could save on the Nintendo
Wow.
cartridge. It was really weird that you
I
could
feel
do
like can you do that on Zelda? One of the Zelda games?
Maybe
the
maybe
first
you're
one.
right.
The only
think
reason
you're
I
right.
think that is I remember somebody saying like recently that there's a time limit on the way that they saved on there.
Mhm.
What's funny is you remember the other way that games when they didn't necessarily have the technology was with passwords. You remember that? Like you get a password, so then you put the password in to get back where you were.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they allowed that. It wasn't a save, it was more like a skip. That
That's
password
right.
allow you to get to that level. Like
Mhm.
if you were halfway through the level, you would start at that beginning of that
That's
level,
right.
but at
Yeah.
least you didn't have to play all of it. Like
Yeah.
Super
Right.
Mario Brothers 3. If you got to world 8, like you could shut off the game, so you must have been able to get a password.
Echo the Dolphin, you got passwords too.
Wow,
Oh,
what was the point of that game?
We have to get into that.
What
But
That's
was
so
the point of
funny.
that game?
Scott,
That
do you
game
think
was that game was a game changer though.
that
You
game
play
was?
it was a
Yeah.
very relaxing game.
No.
Like all you were like it was like you're just watching this thing swim and you wanted
And
to do
drown.
flips and drown.
But Scott, you were talking about this influx of arcade historians and gaming YouTubers and stuff. Do you feel like that? And we asked one of my colleagues this too, who came on once to talk about nostalgia, Jen Bankert, who does the long take review. Shout out to the long take review. Do you feel like there's a wave of conversation happening around older video games now? Like, yes, there's a whole new gaming experience, but
Yeah.
is there a bigger return to more nostalgic gaming experiences that you feel like this is a good time for something like Game Changers to come out?
Yeah. I mean, it feels like there's a huge one. Like there's a new business model. Everybody says they have one of these in their city, but an arcade that you just pay money to get in, like 10, 15, 20 bucks. And then once you're in, you can
Unlimited
play everything. It's unlimited play.
They have it on Long Island now.
Oh,
Yeah, they're they're everywhere. And then in Dallas, there's a National Video Game Museum that's so cool. That's actually where we recorded our Kickstarter video. Phil happened to be in Dallas and I live in Houston, so I just drove up and we rented it for a couple of hours after they closed. Oh man, they've got the original prototype for the Power Glove where it's just like a welding glove or just like a worker's glove with all these electrodes on it. And they have pretty much every console you can imagine there. They have one that's just a whole wall. They have multiple walls where it's just console all the way around where you could just play them. They have like a Commodore 64 there. And then some of them are like in glass where you can't actually play them. You could
They
just
have in television.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely in television.
In television,
and that's one you can actually play. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, big time. And then they have a couple of areas that are meant to look like they have one that's meant to look like a kid's bedroom in the 80s. And they really have made it look like that. And they have a living room too where it's got like the shag carpet and the wood panel.
Oh my
and then
God.
the coffee table.
It reminds
and
me of the Museum of Motion Pictures.
Yeah.
There was a section in Queens, in Astoria. There was a section of video game area.
They did.
This just reminds probably multiplied by money. Just a museum of that. That's awesome.
It's got an Intellivision right there. And they even have a section that's supposed to look like a video game store from the early 80s during the video game crash. Like right there, you can play E.T. from the Atari because, that's kind of what people say. It kind of became the scapegoat for the video game crash of the 1983. And then there's a video game store that's like closing, everything must go, but it's a whole video game store. And then there's a little arcade in the back. And then, there's a lot of YouTubers that are doing it. There's a lot of gamers, even like on Twitch and stuff, that are playing retro games. I was just looking it up, like how do you stream a retro game? And it's pretty easy to do. Yeah, like you just get this little thing and you're able to do something.
It's funny you're saying because there is a big boom of it, Dan. Like there's in Smithtown near us, there's a place called Retro Source. And the whole store, he has one part of it looks like the Max from Saved by the Bell.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And another part looks like the bar that Marty McFly walks in when he goes to the future, and it's all retro, and he has retro games. Like that's where you go to get a old school Sega game, and it's obviously a thing. Like, I mean, we have a podcast called the Nostalgia Test, and it's like what I've seen lately though, like 80s and 90s are like,
Booming.
especially 90s are hot right now. Like
Yeah.
everybody wants to do that. I think people are really want, first of all, to connect to their past, but it will. Are you seeing that it relates to the kids these days too?
To an extent, yes. Like, I have two little kids, and they love playing Nintendo and Super Nintendo. It feels kind of like there's a dip, like everything. Those like Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, and even some of the ones like right after it were like the peak of that kind of game. The kind of side scrolling and stuff like that. That was the absolute peak. And then, when it went to 3D, it kind of dipped down because it's a new technology. So those kind of games sometimes to me don't have the playability. Like, I mean, Super Mario World, my whole family can sit and play that because it's just it's a well-written game. It's a well thought out game.
Yeah.
And a lot of kids are into like older stuff. I think it's so funny because the way that like TikTok and all that stuff is, I'll hear my kids say something. I'm like, how do you know about that? But a lot of times it's just little clips. It's not like the whole thing, but they'll know something. Then they'll say something from a show. And I'm like, how do you know that? And so they know about a lot of those old things because even YouTubers for them. But, I think about it like when I was a kid, I always really liked, Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin. And I remember a lot of older people would be like, how do you know about that? That's before you were born. I'm like, yeah, but it's good. You know what I mean? Like I was always obsessed with like 60s and 70s music, early heavy metal and stuff like that. And so they're the same way, I was into rock and roll, so I was obsessed with the history of it. I liked all the punk rock bands were popular before I was born. That whole CBGB scene in New York happened before I was born, but I wanted to know about it because I was into the punk rock that was big at the time in the 90s. And so they're the same way. They love these video games. Like Sonic is still huge. I mean, look, Sonic had a movie. Mario had a movie. It's crazy.
I mean, it's
Pokemon.
My nephew plays, and we got him a PC. Became a PC player. Plays Fortnite, obviously. Buys all the skins and stuff. But the other day we were driving, and he's like, "Hey, I tried to play this Bubble Bobble. Like, couldn't even say Bubble Bubble game." I'm like, "You mean Bubble Bobble?" I was like, and remember, if you remember that game, that was the first time there was two different. I don't know if it was the first time, but they had two different endings.
Yeah,
because if you played it as a one player, it had a ending, and then if you played it at two players, it had a different ending. And he's like, "What do you mean you could play?" I'm like, "You are teammates like when you play the game," and he's like, "Oh, we should play." So because they have like that little Nintendo game that like plays like a couple different 25 different games or whatever. And it's funny because he has like, the latest PlayStation, the latest PC, and he's still going on TV upstairs to play a game that was like when I was like a kid was like the best thing ever.
I love that game.
And it's also what I find is they're harder.
That game is hard.
The games, they don't react as fast as the games they have now. So when you try to do something, it's not as you have to like I don't want to say dumbify, but you have to figure out the coordination and the how fast these things move for you to be good at. Like, have you tried play? Like, you obviously have, but like, I tried playing games that we played as kids, and I'm like, I'm terrible right now because I'm like, what? Like, this game is harder. It's crazy. It's nuts, but it's great to see.
Yeah.
So I have a question about now. This is the business part of this. Like, you shot all the stuff already, or
no? We have not. No,
you haven't.
We're in the process of doing that, and that's why we're running this Kickstarter to finish off the first season. Because with a lot of the other stuff I've done, like Nickelodeon, for example, it's a lot of actors and writers. So you go to New York for a week, you go to LA for a week. That's pretty much what we did. We took 2 trips to New York, 2 trips to LA, and like when we went to LA the first time, we interviewed like 15 people in one trip because it was just like we boom, 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 boom. And so we were kind of able to make the orange years for kind of cheap. And then this is GWAR. They're based out of Richmond. So I'd go to Richmond and stay for a week. And then I still went to LA and New York to interview other people. You know how you get other people to kind of talk about, like, I got to interview Weird Al, which was nuts for GWAR. But for this, because it's video games and you don't really have to be in a certain place, especially since a lot of these people, they're not doing it anymore. Like, we kind of found a lot of these people, they were creators, they were artists, but they didn't have a desire to run a business. You know, like once they'd make a game, and then once that became this whole big business, they're like, I don't want to do that. You know, I'm a creator. So they go off and they create their own thing and let their business that they created keep making money for them, but they don't have a desire to be a CEO. So we're having to travel a lot, you know, because everybody's in different spaces. And we really want to make the production value really high so that at the end of the day, we could sell it to somebody. You know, I was kind of talking about before, trying to pitch an idea to Netflix or Hulu or whoever and have them make it. It's really hard, but to make something yourself and then just sell it to them at the end and they don't have to do anything, that's a lot easier. So it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot more people. You know, when it's just you can work for free or whatever, because you're the director, it's your project, you're investing in your career. But when you have to have a crew, it's not super cool to be like, hey, everybody, you're, you know, like we all hear it. You're doing this for your resume. That's such garbage. So, you know, we want to be able to have a real crew that knows what they're doing. And, you know, we can make this thing really, really good. So that's why we're doing the crowdfund to do the first season. And then hopefully after that, if we can sell it, then somebody will hire us to do more seasons after that. We won't have to hustle getting money anywhere we can.
So do you guys have like a list of games already?
Yeah, we do.
You're thinking like this is going to be the first season. Is it range from like GoldenEye to, like, you know, you said like you Star Fox, I get it, but are you starting at like, are you thinking of starting at like the beginning? Or are you just kind of going with like one of the biggest game changers?
And that's kind of one of those things where to me, it's a good thing. It may end up being a bad thing. I don't know, but we wanted to do something that was like in our Kickstarter video. Phil says there's something for everyone. And, you know, like, for example, me, Nintendo and Super Nintendo were my main things. That was my childhood, but I still have nostalgia for a lot of that Atari stuff and the old arcade stuff because I was a little kid and I can remember that. And then I have nostalgia for stuff that was more in the late 90s and 2000s when I wasn't a little kid anymore, because we still, you know, we still played it with our friends, and you still just remember
those times when you actually went to somebody's house and you played like Halo. You know, like there's videos of like where they're saying like kids these days will never know what it was like to, like, you're playing with 100 people in Fortnite, but you're not playing with them. Like you're right, and it's like watching your friend like get the Superman in Tony Hawk while you're there was such a great feeling, where now it's like, oh great, you got it. It's like a different shared experience. Like the fact
these are like
that
your close friends or your brother or your cousin. So you're like invested, like, you can remember sitting there like, oh my God. And all your friends are kind of like biting their nails. Like, and then you do it. And there's like this like victory, like,
exactly.
It is
different shared feeling that was like,
you're there. You're the coolness of getting to spend the night at someone's house or whatever. So I mean,
you shut off from the world. Like we didn't have phones back then. Like what was it called? LAN parties, like LAN parties. There's like a word for it. And it's like where that you could go and connect other Xboxes, and everybody was like 8-player mode, 2 different TVs.
Right.
Figured it out. It's like,
God.
You know, that's not the same. Yeah, I'm sure you feel good. But like, you know, I saw a kid on Instagram, little child, you know, he won Fortnite and he like ran upstairs to tell his mom, and he's like so excited, he's crying about it. How awesome would it have been if he did that in front of like 10 of his friends? Like, you know, like the whole other You know, yeah, he could share about it. It's just, but that feeling is just like, oh man, like I do admit, like, talk about nostalgia, like that was like the reason sometimes you even went and played a game. Dan, just not to sidetrack, but freaking Tony Hawk, going to Dave's house. I only played Tony Hawk at Dave's house. I only remember learning new moves.
I know what you mean.
Because my other friends were doing it. And we're like, yo, how did you do that? Yo, I don't know. I hit these buttons.
Yeah.
And you're like, you were helping each other out, you know? Yeah. It's just like
pushing each other, but whether it's with helping each other or the competition, like I can remember that. Like when I play Super Mario World, I have like vivid memories of trying to figure it out with my cousin. And that's another thing I was kind of telling my kids about is, you know, I know every secret on these games, Super Mario World. I know everything about it. But when you're a kid, there's walkthroughs now. So like my kids, whenever they'll play a game. And if they get really frustrated, they don't like to, but they will watch a playthrough, you know, where they're like, let me see. But
I see it all the time.
There was nothing. Like there was Nintendo Power magazine, but there was no guarantee that was going to have the answer. And then do you remember there was like Nintendo Power hotline? I
was going to just say there was a hotline that you called and some guy on the other end was like, all right, so now you jump here and you run.
Yeah.
It's
like there's a really cool video. I think the Gaming Historian does it where they show what that was like. Or maybe I can't remember who it is, but if you look up that, it's crazy. It was just like, they were just like young people and they would play the games and they would make maps of them. Like when you would call in, they were just looking at notebooks that were all just hand drawings. And like, you know, they made a handbook out of everybody's drawings and they'd Xerox them and give them to everybody. But it was just, that was their job, was to play through the games. And, you know, these group of people would play through these games. These people would play through these and learn everything and then put it all together in a book. But, you know, that was a 1-900 number. So, you know, my mom would let me call
10
it
cents a
every now and then. And usually it was when me and my brother were both playing a game because it kind of made more sense. It's like she's spending money on both of us. She'd be like, yeah, okay, fine. Y'all can call. And sometimes they wouldn't know. Every now and then, if it was a lesser known game, they would be like, we don't know how to do it. So to find these secrets, it almost was like urban legends, like Bloody Mary or the kid, the ghost in 3 Men and a Baby. You would hear about it. You know, like I can remember, do you remember in the first Super Mario Brothers on Nintendo, there's like -1, level -1, and you can only get there by, it's a glitch, and you go through a wall, and then it says level -1, and it's just a crazy bonkers swimming level with fire under there, and there's no ending. You just go until you die. But I can remember people talking about that, and I was like, that doesn't seem real. Yeah, right. And then you try it and you find it and you're like, oh my God, that's real, you know?
Yeah. Like
but it goes back to like, even like the you would go to school and you would talk about this, you know, like you wouldn't be sharing this on Instagram. You wouldn't be, you know, cause that would be too quick. Like you would have to be like, yo, you don't know I did it. I did. It's like, yo, I know that kid that did it. No, you don't know the kid that did it. Like, yo, I know the kid.
Yes.
I was at a wrestling match and this guy was telling me that his friend did it and it's possible. You know, like it would be, and like you said, that's how urban legends were started. Like there's not many urban legends anymore. Everything's just, you know, broken.
I was really good with Mega Man. Like I was really good at Mega Man 2 and 3 in particular. And in school, I actually, you had to write a how-to paper. So I wrote how to beat Mega Man 3.
Yes.
And I would literally have people call, like friends calling me and being like, Scott, we're over here. What do we do? You know, and I felt so cool. Like, okay, you have to get this power to be able to defeat this guy. And I remember one guy, I was like, oh, you have to have this power. And he's like, oh, I don't have it. And I'm like, you're screwed. I'm so sorry, dude. I felt so bad telling that because it was one of those things where you couldn't go back, and I was like, oh man, like there's
like you have to die and do this all over again.
Remember, you couldn't go back. Mega Man was one of those games that I always felt when I played, I was like, why doesn't he jump a little higher? I was like, I always felt like his jumps were like a little short. I was like, no, and like, but that's like everything you're saying too. Like it just makes so much sense to kind of have like a docu series to kind of go through this, because video games isn't just about the game. It's kind of the cultural nostalgic connection to
Yeah.
those games. Like I only like, yes, I think of the game, but like some of my most vivid gaming experiences were like with my dad. Like he loved Contra and Super
Oh,
Contra. He
cool.
loved both of those games. So we'd come home
Dude,
and from somewhere and he'd look at me, and because the Nintendo was in the basement, and he'd be like, Contra. And then he would like run down the steps to
Dude.
start playing Contra. My mom was so angry. But like you would play these games and and like it's not about the game like anymore, because I had Atari 6400 as well, or one of those big one
Mm.
of those games are terrible. But Robotron was fun, and Centipede and all those things, but like it wasn't about the game, it was about, like you all saying, like the game, the
Mhm.
experience with it. Like even with like Nintendo 64, when I got better, like the wrestling games are so good. It really wasn't about the game. It was about how frustrated my friend got when my other friend, who's been on the podcast, Mike, wouldn't be even paying attention, but be winning all the time. And like
Ah.
just
he's like
hitting
button
people with
mashing,
chairs
and he's
all the
like
time, and
somehow
just
I'm like,
like
how did you
whatever.
learn how to do that? You know,
Yeah, man.
the other
Eh,
day, I
yeah.
mean, I stole
Stole my
Dan's
64.
Nintendo 64 from his parents' house, and I got a couple of my friends that I wrestled with, that we were at an alumni party, and I was like, oh, yo, I just got Nintendo 64 and I got WrestleMania, and they're like, yo, we're coming over. Right. And but we couldn't figure out how to toss people over the rope for the Royal Rumble. And like I looked it
Oh,
up, and I'm like,
yeah.
how did we do this as kids? And then like I'm now thinking it's so funny because we were playing and one of us did it. And we're like, yo, how did you do it? And like I said, I was like,
They don't
we
want to
literally had
tell.
that
They're just like, I'm not
experience.
telling
And he's like, I don't
anybody.
know. I think I pressed the yellow button. I'm like,
There's
one of
four
That
the
was
of
one of the
them.
worst things when you do it on accident. You're like, how did I do
Yeah.
that? I can remember like Scorpion's career when he throws it.
Yeah.
When he throws it, I was like, how did he do that? How did he? Because I was used to playing I'm trying the Street Fighter controls, like the Hadouken and then like
Yes.
Yeah.
Guile's Sonic Boom, but it's like back forward punch is like how to
Yeah.
do it. I can
Yeah.
remember being like, what?
I
Yeah,
remember
no, I
just
mean it was all such a great, and it was such a great time with just that experience, and then also how well the characters of each, like the video games that did well had great characters, backstories. You
Yeah.
like the character, and you love being Mario. Like you're like, I'm full in this world. Like you
Yeah,
follow
man.
Mario from, this is just one guy.
Yep.
Is he a plumber? Who knows? Like, like you're like, okay. And then now you're in his Mario world and Princess, like to the point where there's a movie now, and you're like, that movie sucked. The John Leguizamo movie was, let's not even, that was
Come on
terrible.
now.
I mean, come on. But like the recent one I liked, I was like, it hit all the,
Justice
it hit
for
all
Luigi
the things that you needed. Justice for Luigi, man. Like Luigi was kind of not.
in that movie.
Yeah, he needs his
at
own
all.
movie. I
Yeah.
think Luigi needs his own movie.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Like like video games have been around now for decades. Then it's gotten to a point where it's like this whole other thing. I feel like this is that like Nintendo Sega to like Nintendo 64 beginnings of places. Like this is it's like really for me, maybe just because that's when I gamed, but still there's a difference. Like it's just there's such a difference, and I think it's such a good time like for something like this, like Game Changers. Like I'm thinking like, oh my god, you could do like the Golden Eye. Like as soon as that came out,
Oh my
like
God.
the world exploded during that.
GoldenEye?
But like even all the first person shooters that came before that, like Doom was so huge. I remember going to my friend's house and playing Doom all night, just
Duke
watching
Nukem
playing
3D
Doom.
on PC.
Yeah,
Mech
Warrior.
Did you ever play
These
Myst?
these are all games that are on our list.
Oh, really?
Look up if you go to our Kickstarter, like a little bit down lower, we have all the games. And so the way that we kind of did it, because we didn't want to guarantee stuff the first season.
Yeah.
Because stuff can happen sometimes where somebody tries to hold you up legally, or somebody's not available for an interview at this time. So we lit the first season is going to be 6 episodes, because we kind of looked it up, and Movies That Made Us, Toys That Made Us, they seem to have like 6 episode the first season. I think I said the first episode. The first season, 6 episodes. It seemed kind of like that was a trend. But we list more games, and we're saying these are the games that we want to do. We might not get to all of them the first season, but we'll eventually get to them. So help us make this first season a success so we can get to them. But it gives people an idea of what the vibe of the show is going to be. And, you know, you asked kind of what it was. We wanted there to be something for everybody, like actual arcade games, different consoles like Nintendo, Sega, Atari, PlayStation. So it's like different, like PC. That's another one. You know, we wanted there to be different things, but to me, they're all tied together. They're all things I would want to learn about.
Yes.
You know, but it is kind of risky because it's like someone might be a huge Myst fan and they're like, I don't care about Tomb Raider. But, you know, we were just like, I feel like I would just love to watch a show about like old retro games, even ones that I don't know about.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping,
Sure.
you know, and that's kind of the way that, you know, the movies that made us, that's one thing that I've kind of heard is that it's why there's not a lot of these being made by the big streamers anymore, because somebody might watch, a bunch of people might watch one episode and then not very many people will watch another episode. Whereas if it's like a docuseries where it's like part 1, part 2, part 3, where it's like, you know, like Tiger King, that where everyone leads into it, people will watch the whole thing. But to me, it's like, but I don't care. That's fun to me, you know, like I liked watching the movies that made us and the toys that made us and stuff like that. So it's like, that's kind of what I wanted to do. And also it just felt different to kind of do it that way. And so when we were picking the games, there was a couple of things. It was like, one, what is kind of near games that are kind of near and dear to people's hearts, maybe not the same people, but they are games that are kind of a cultural zeitgeist. It had to have changed the game in some way, some way. And then the third, and this is why some people are like, oh, why isn't this on there? Why isn't this on there? It's kind of the third and fourth one. There had to be a story there, because if there's not a story there, what are you doing? You know, like with This Is GWAR, it's not really about the band. Like it's about their struggle. Like we want to do like people making Tomb Raider. What was that struggle like to get this female character? Like they had pushback. People wanted it to be like a guy. And, you know, there was a lot of other things like that had never been done before, that they kind of wanted to combine the 3D-ness of, I think, Virtua Fighter with the fluidness of Prince of Persia. And, you know, and then also like the fact that was kind of the first game that was like really cinematic. Like there was first person shooters in terms of 3D, like Doom and Wolfenstein, but that took it to another level where it's a third person. You see her.
Yes.
And there's a lot more of a story there. You know, it's more emphasis other than just, you have to go here and kill all the baddies and then defeat this person. There was an actual story with cutscenes where it feels like almost like a movie that you're playing.
Yeah.
That was really one of the first ones that ever did that. So that one changed the game. In addition, you know, people are like, oh yeah, it changed the game because female protagonists. Yes, but that's not it. Like the animation style was different. And the also the storytelling style was different. But they were struggling, and it was a small team. A lot of these, I think that's so cool how it was just like 4 or 5 people that are like young, that are just like sitting in a house. Like, how do we do this? I don't know. And people telling them, oh, you can't do that. Like, I think the way that the technology wasn't there like it is now. Like people say, one person posted a picture of Super Mario Brothers 1, and they said, this picture has more bytes than the whole game did. You know, and that shows you where we are now.
Wow.
You know, the hardware of the time was just not there. So they had to kind of find clever ways to make it be 3D. And so that was it. There had to be a story there. There's a lot of games that are cool and change the game, but as we looked at it, it's like there's not really a story there. It's like a big company that kind of knew what they were doing and they tried something different, you know, or there just wasn't a struggle there. And then also, like, unfortunately for this first season, if the majority of the people are overseas, we kind of can't do that. Like Mega Man, that's one that I really want to do, because I feel like he hits that sweet spot where he's not like Mario and Sonic, where it's like everybody knows it.
No,
but he's still pretty damn popular and people
he had
like
a cartoon. Yeah.
And he had a cartoon. Yeah.
Right.
And do you remember Captain and the Game Master? How they had Mega Man on there, but all the versions of the Nintendo characters were garbage. Like they weren't anything like Simon Belmont was like, hello, what are we going to do today? Like he was this kind of foppish weirdo, and then like King Hippo it was just very Mega Brain from what am I Samus? Metroid.
Oh, that was a good game.
Bad guy, Mega Brain was the bad guy, but it talked like, remember the plant in Little Shop of Horrors? Like that's what it talked like. So weird. Yeah, that's what it's like. What the hell? But anyway, Mega Man. I feel like there's a story there that people kind of know, so they'd be sucked in. But then you can tell them a lot more. But unfortunately, pretty much everybody that was involved in that game is in Japan. That'd be really hard for us to do, to go over there, and it'd just be difficult. So we were kind of thinking of that, like realistically, who could we get access to? Mario and Sonic, those are kind of difficult. I mean, on one hand, I feel like everybody knows a lot about those characters, but also with Mario and Sonic being in the spotlight right now, it's going to be a lot harder to do that because.
I mean, that could also be like, if this thing takes off, which we wanted to, in season 3, you have enough money to talk to the guys that will be like, we'll talk about the struggle about Mario and like, what, how it started, right? Didn't it start at Donkey Kong? Didn't it start?
Yeah.
His character started all the way from like Donkey Kong era.
Yeah.
So like
he was in Donkey Kong first. Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Wow.
So man, so much. We could go on forever, but so what's the next step? What are you trying to raise?
We're trying to raise 120,000.
120,000.
It's pretty ambitious, but we really wanted to do it. I mean, when you look at the budget for most documentaries is like $1 million, or
I know.
This is a fraction of that, and it's for a whole season.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. That's all you're trying to raise. Like, you want more? Do you want to pay yourself more? Like.
That'd be great. But, we're going to do it. We're going to win this crowdfund one way or another. But really, the more help we can get, the less we have to kind of like do ourselves. So we really would appreciate anything and everything. There's a lot of cool perks. Like we're going to do a Blu-ray. So there is a physical component.
Really?
There's going to be a lot of stuff like Phil Moore is going to sign a bunch of stuff.
Wow.
We're going to do a theatrical screening of the first 3 episodes. Because obviously, I think theatrical screenings are so cool, especially when it's like an event. Like that's what we did with GWAR, where the theatrical screening wasn't just watching the movie. Like before, they were out walking around in their costumes, and people could take pictures of them with these big monster. And then you watch the movie, and then there was a Q&A with them just as the people, like out of costume, where you could ask them. And
are you doing anything else right now to like be able to pay for your life? Or is this is your thing?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of freelancing stuff right now because I'm trying to get other projects started, and especially because I'm not giving up now. After I made these 2 documentaries, I busted my ass to make them. My wife was so awesome for letting me do that much work, and it's like now I have 2 that actually went somewhere.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I don't want to give up and be like, well, that was great. It would be very difficult for me to do another one like that again, where I spend like a year and a half, 2 years of my life with, and it's like a part-time, sometimes full-time job for that long. And then there's no guarantee you're going to make any money. And even if you do, it's not a lot, and I'm traveling, I'm gone. So I'm trying to do it where it's a little more responsible. That's why I was trying to sell ideas. Because the other thing is, I'm not looking to try to make a lot of money. I can go edit a commercial or something and make money for myself and pay my bills. But, when I make these documentaries, we borrow money from people, and, I got to pay that back because I don't want to be like, I'm sorry. And that's really stressful, because when you're selling it, you have to think, okay, like I have to sell it for this much money. If I don't make a large profit, that's fine, but I got to pay back the people that paid me, or else I'll feel like an asshole for not doing that. So that's why I really wanted to crowdfund it, where I don't have to feel like that. It's like we can just do this. And there's also, like I'm always begging for more. Like I'm going around, like we'll make it, and then I'll have to go ask for more. I'm getting like 5,000 here, and then we run out. Whereas with this, it's like we can actually make something good from the start. Like I can hire a cinematographer, I can hire an editor, I can hire all these things, and I do a lot of that stuff myself, so I can do that to keep the costs down. But I'm not having to, call in a bunch of favors. And with all the films I've done, there's at least one thing where I didn't do it right. I had to just, this is all I have, so I can't afford the person that I want, so I'm just going to have to do it as good as I can. For both Orange Years and This Is GWAR, there's both elements of that are like that. I don't want to.
It's funny you say it because no one would notice. But
because they're amazing,
right?
Right.
So I thought it was amazing, but the fact that you're saying that, like, I mean, it's humbling and it's great, and I understand about crowdfunding. I'm currently trying to fund a tech startup that I have, but like. It is tough, and when you have empathy, it's a little tougher to be like, oh, I'm gonna take your money, and like people are like, just get the funding. I'm like, yeah, but I'm gonna need to pay them back. Like you'll pay them back before you pay you back, and it's like
on that same note, with the crowdfund, you're not like directly borrowing a bunch of money from one person,
exactly,
but you still have to do a good job for them. And I think that unfortunately, a lot of people have burnt people with Kickstarters. Like how many things, like I've donated to movies that never came out. Because people have an idea, because now that's it. You just think of something from the 80s or 90s and you're like, Alf, I want to do an Alf documentary, and you do a Kickstarter, or like Perfect Strangers. I want to do a Perfect Strangers. You do a Kickstarter. You just think of any random thing from the 80s. That's what I think people do. And, a long time, like you can look at it like 4 or 5 years ago, that's what would happen. Like people that had never made a movie before would crowdfund and get a bunch of money, and then it never came out. And
I mean, it kind of screwed a lot of people up.
There's a bunch of them. With Orange Years, luckily we didn't do a big Kickstarter. Ours was for pretty small, but thank God we were able to. I had never made a movie before, but luckily we were able to get it done. It came out later than we wanted to because a bunch of companies, well, there was a couple of companies at the very end that held us up, that said they wanted to buy it and then put it in limbo. And so we got all these people that kickstarted it, and they're like, where is this? Because it had already debuted at a film festival at Doc NYC. So clearly we've made the movie. You know what I mean? It's like, we're not, and we had a trailer out, but there was a company that bought it and then kind of put it in limbo. And I won't say the name of the company, but whenever they came to us and said, we want this, we really thought that they would be the company that would make us. We said, we'll look back on it and go, that's the company that made us.
Yeah.
But they weren't. And so,
man,
but
why did they put it in limbo? Was it because like politics in the business itself, or this is just what they do? Was just like, it's just the way the business is. Yeah. It's like,
so there's not a lot of people that have done this. Like, I mean, dealing with, I'm not a Hollywood person, but now I deal with a bunch of Hollywood people, it's kind of cutthroat. There's people that are a little shady, but that was the only company we ever worked for that I was like, that's fucking awful what you did. And it's because, like, essentially there's some people that do this. We never had anybody else do it. Like the company that ended up buying the Orange Juice is called Gravitas. They're awesome. They did great. Yeah. The company that bought This Is GWAR was a company called Shudder, and they're owned by AMC, and they are pretty much horror stuff. They were awesome. Like, get Shudder. A lot of people are like, oh, is it a bunch of B movie? No, the stuff on there is really good. Like, they have top-notch stuff on there. They were so nice. Like, they respected us and treated us so well. So overall, I've had a good experience. But this one company, and there's other ones that do this, what they do is they come in and they give you an offer that's like 4 times what everybody else is. Like, Orange Years debuted at Doc NYC, and we were getting a bunch of offers for people to buy it. And this one offer came in that was like way better than everything else. Like, it really was like 3 or 4
Too good to be
times.
true.
Like we could pay all of our investors back immediately with this money.
Wow.
And then, so the way that these distribution companies work, if you don't sell it right to Hulu, you sell it to a distribution company who then sells it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they'll give you an advance, sometimes they won't. If it's a movie that's like pop culture-y, like The Orange Years, they might, because they know that people are going to watch it because it has a built-in audience. And then there's like a revenue split from there on out. And a lot of times it's like 70-30, like they take 30, you take 70. But it's worth it because they can go into Hulu. I can't do that, and they're doing a bunch of work for you.
Their distribution arm is bigger. Yeah.
So this company was giving us way more money up front. Like it was crazy. And then the cut of it was like the cut that they took was like very small. Like, so it was just like overall a way better deal. And they did stuff like The Orange Years, So we were like, damn, this is amazing. Like, this is the company that we want. This would be a dream come true because they've got stuff that's out there. And what they do is they make you this offer. They're never going to give you that offer. They just want you to turn everybody else down. So that's what we did. There was a company called The Orchard that I would love to work with that we were like, oh, I'm so sorry. Gravitas, the company that eventually took it, we said no, because this company was exactly what we wanted. And they were just giving us so much more money. And, the owners were like, this belongs with us. We're passionate about this. This is what we do. We know how to market it. So you go with them and then they essentially like stall and we signed a contract. And that's the thing. I always used to say, nothing's finalized until the contract is signed. And now I say nothing is finalized until the check is in the bank, because at the end of the day, what these companies will do is they just kept stalling for like 6 months. And we're like, why does it take this long to sign a simple contract, But there's, we had a hang up here. We had some turnover. We're changing. It was just always an excuse. So now you've turned everybody else down. Your movie's not hot anymore, whatever you want to say, because when it came out in Doc NYC, it's locked. This is like almost a year after the movie's come out at this point, or it debuted at Doc NYC.
Sure.
When it debuted at Doc NYC, it was getting written up in a bunch of stuff, and it was new. All these companies go to these festivals to find new things. They know that you're probably hurting. You probably have investors breathing down your neck, because we told our investors, we got a great deal. We're going to be paying you back, and it's with an amazing company. We're going to be paying you back quick. And then they're like, hey, what's up? 6 months goes by. Hey, what's up? You said you're about to pay. So you're not hot anymore. You've turned everybody else down. You need to pay your investors back. So then they go, okay, look, here's the deal. Like it was really crazy. I'm trying to think of a movie where somebody does this, but it went from like, guys, I love the film. It's great. Guys, this belongs with us. The film is so great. We're so lucky to have it too. All right, kids, this is what I'm going to tell you. That deal that we signed, it doesn't mean shit. It's done. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to give you any money up front, and I'm going to take 50% of this. And the other thing you do is you sign it for 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20. And he was like, and I'll have the rights forever. So it was originally it was like, you're going to give us X amount of money up front. You're going to take like 20% of it. And then you have it for like 5-10 years. And then we're like, we have a signed contract. And the guy was like, cool, then sue me. Yeah. Because even when you have a signed contract, if they're bigger than you, what the fuck are you going to do? Nothing. They have better lawyers than you.
They have the money to keep going to court.
They have the money. We didn't have the time or money. And they know that. They know that. So they're going to essentially just hope that you take the deal. You're like, fine.
You're
so
desperate.
I thought about it, and at the same time, all of our Kickstarter people are like, guys, they were so nice, but there were a couple of people that were like, guys, what is going on? You had it.
Yeah.
Where is this movie? And we couldn't say anything, because it's all happening behind the scenes. And so, like I thought about it a lot, and it was one of the most satisfying things I ever did to just be like, man, fuck off. The deal's off. And the guy was like, okay, well, then we'll sign something that says we're mutually parting ways. And I go, I'm not signing anything that says we're mutually parting ways. I don't want out of the contract that you originally sell. You do. So you guys change it. And so then I signed it. And we went to Gravitas and said, hey, do you guys maybe want this? We know we turned you down, but you want this? And they're like, yeah, bring it on. Because like COVID hit, and then all these companies were like, if you're sitting on a movie, give it to us, because we're not going to be able to make movies. So Gravitas like took it, and they did a great job with it, and they were super nice. And
sure, they needed content. They needed everything content they could.
And they were really cool. Like a couple of our producers had worked with them before. So, man, it was sorry to go off on that tangent, but
you don't have to say sorry at all. People need to know about, like,
these
behind the scenes is a tough thing.
Just watch it. That's what I would say.
You get so excited, and then you're like, oh man, everything's going to be working out. I'm going to finally, like, like I break through my, generational wealth and like whatever. And then it's like, nope, these guys know exactly what they're doing. They're, they had you buy everything. They could easily be like, oh yeah, they're just going to take it because, like, where else are they going to go? So it takes a lot for you to be like, no, all right, I'll just go somewhere else.
It shows like the strength of like the creator, like of you guys and you. And
I just knew somebody would want it. I knew somebody's going to want this. It's not like we're going to get turned down by everybody. And even if we don't get the same deals that we were getting because we're not like the hot thing anymore, it's going to be better than this deal.
That's right.
Sure.
And I think that, there's only so many people that are in that space. And I think the other thing is, you're kind of thinking, I don't want this guy to dislike me. I don't want him to go around because he's bigger than me, and he's doing what I want to do. But I was like, no, I'm not
good.
I'm not
good
doing
for
that.
you, man.
Good for you.
So now you're going a different way, and you're going to crowdfund it.
That's
so
good.
So with crowdfunding, you don't necessarily owe the people back. They just own a part of it, right?
And it's almost like
it's going? It's like equity kind of thing.
And you give them perks. So you want to. So essentially, kind of what it is it's your own. Somebody told me this, and I don't know if you've seen these movies, but it's called In Search of Darkness. And this company that does these, it's just they do a docu series about like 80s horror films, and then they did another one like In Search of is their name. They have In Search of Darkness. That's about 80s horror. They have In Search of Tomorrow. That's about 80s sci-fi. And they have one In Search of an Action Hero. That's all about the action heroes of the Van Damme, Seagal, Stallone. And these guys will look them up. They'll crowdfund something. They get like $250,000. And so I had hit them up one time and been like, hey, do you need anybody to help on your crew? I would love to work on this. And I had a really great talk with the owner. And he was kind of like, you create this community and your crowdfund is your distribution deal, because a lot of times people pay $25 for a digital download. Well, that's how you get it out to people. The crowdfund is essentially just a pre-sale of it. It's the same way. Because if I don't do it that way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on iTunes and Amazon and Vudu. And I think Vudu's not a thing anymore, but all those where you rent it.
Yeah.
And then people are going to buy it that way. It's the same thing. If someone goes to iTunes and rents my movie for whatever, it's the same thing as if I crowdfund it and I go, look, when I'm done with this, you get it. But I don't have to use iTunes.
They're pre-buying it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really cool to get to like feel like you're part of a community and stuff. But yeah, the world's a different place than 2016 when we did the crowdfund for Orange Years. I can't believe it was that long ago, but I think that people have been burned, and that's why they're a little more hesitant. But that's why I really wanted to get out there, because it's like I will finish this because I have, like I'm not somebody that's gonna not finish the movie. I have 2 that are out, so you don't have to worry about donating and then it sits in limbo forever because, I didn't know what I was doing. I've made 2 films and I've made them like this, indie films. A lot of times people are directors for these big budget things. And then when they try to do an indie thing, they're like, oh, well, if we don't get $250,000, we can't finish it. And I'm like, what? Yes, you can. Like if worse comes to worse, I'll just shoot it and edit myself.
Yeah.
I mean, why not? It's a documentary.
Sure.
But yeah, so these people, people will get like $100,000 and then they're like, well, we can't finish it. We still need more. I'm like, what? You can't finish it for that much?
I mean, that's the thing. I
But
mean, I think everyone listening and watching this, like, know that Scott is gonna finish this movie. Like, he has finished the Orange Years, the GWAR documentary. I mean, and they're very high quality documentaries. They're just
thanks. Thanks for saying
amazing.
that.
And I think, no one should be worried about if donate money to this and for game changers to get made, that it's not going to get made. It 100% will get made.
Yeah.
And that's also why we have Scott on. I mean, when we first met Scott, I mean, the Orange Years was out, and first of all, we were just starting out, and we couldn't believe we were being reached out to be like, holy shit, like, we're going to have this person on this great documentary. So when I saw you had this great project coming up, I was like, I got to reach out and tell Scott to come on and talk about this, because
that's so awesome.
This is the community that, like, not just with documentary filmmakers, but with these, us as indie podcasters, knowing that, like, community is very important, and it's also self-supporting and supports each other. And so this is kind of we want everyone to kind of, be out there who listen and watch and support, Scott's work, and definitely hit up the Kickstarter, man. This is going to be a great project.
Yeah, please do.
We'll definitely have all that information, I'm sure, in the newsletter and in the posts of where to go to get this going.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm excited to, first of all, I can't wait for the first three. I'm like, what is it going to be? Because it's not going to be it's not going to be the ones that everybody thinks, like you said, and it's not Sonic, it's not Super Mario. So it's like, I'm excited to see what the first
I will say this, because
layer on there.
Yeah. So there are images of it, so it's not a spoiler. That's what we have filmed with. We teamed up with a really great guy, Marty, who in Justin, Maine, they had been working on a Dragon's Lair documentary. So we're like, hey, let's work on this together. And they're not those kind of people that kickstart and leave it alone. They were working really hard on it. But it's like, hey, what if we kind of team up and do this? So, and we also kind of thought, after you say, we've got Don Bluth involved, then it'd be easier to get other people. Because, I mean, he's not just Dragon's Lair. He's freaking Land Before Time. He's American Tail. He's a dude that almost brought down Disney. He spurred Disney to do that Disney Renaissance with Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid and stuff. But so that's Dragon's Lair is definitely going to be an episode. And that's another one, like the Power Glove. It's polarizing. And I like that. I like it's a beautiful piece of art. It really is.
That's awesome. The one that looks like cartoonish, right?
Yeah, it looks like a cartoon.
And they made the video game like that, which was crazy.
Because it was in the early 80s. And it was on a laser disc. So we get to talk about that too. That's the thing we're looking at in all these, when we do all these, is like, what's the bigger picture we can talk about?
That's right.
And that's, other things that we can add in, like the laser disc. And Tomb Raider was first on the Sega Dreamcast, and that
remember Sega CD.
Mm-hmm.
It was Sega.
I love the story. I'm obsessed with the story of Sega. There kind of was a documentary about it, but I love this. The rise and fall of Sega, I think, is such an interesting story, because it's such a nuance. Anyway, I'm getting off topic, but
it's all good.
But Dragon's Lair, that'll be a for sure one. And that's on Stranger Things. They featured that on the second or third season of Stranger Things. It looked like a freaking cartoon, and this was the early 80s. Wow. When stuff was like Pac-Man and all the vector stuff. But anyway,
that's amazing. I mean, Scott, this has been so fun, so amazing. Another really great episode, and just a great conversation. I feel like one of these days, me and Manny need to get in a room and chill.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is, and I've been thinking about that. Like, we've been 121 episodes. We've done now this since 2020. And I'm just want to get out there with the, and just kind of
should have a podcast at the video game museum.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly. Yeah.
I'll bring my my machine. I'll bring my machine that
Yeah,
plays
yeah,
all three.
that plays
so
all
we can
three.
play Nintendo, Sega, and Super Nintendo.
We need
So
is now-
crazy.
Machine.
Look at that thing. What
All
is
we
it
need-
called?
Oh,
This
my
one
God.
is called this one's called the Super Retro Trio Plus. I liked it because it was like red and white. I don't know why. I just like
and then
that
you
look.
you flip the thing over, it has all the spots to put the controllers in. Holy shit.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
That's
looking.
so crazy. That's awesome.
I like it. It closes up like that, you know.
Yeah.
Wow.
It looked kind of
It
cool.
looks
but
cool, yeah.
There's another one called the Retron. That's a really popular one. I just kind of like this one because it just something about that red and white looked kind of like that 80s futuristic, you
the
know.
First one
Yeah.
I saw that. So there's a gluten-free brewery called Necromantic, which is a horror-themed gluten-free brewery.
Oh, cool.
And always playing horror movies. He actually paid for the rights to be able to stream every horror movie you could think of.
Wow.
But he has an old school television tube TV where you used to have to like close the dial and everything and whatever. And he has that, but it has it's like that, but it's bigger, like the one that you would see in like living rooms and shit. And there's one that plays 4 different I'm like,
the fourth there's one that also does Game Boy. There's one that also does Game Boy.
My God.
It's crazy, man. So I was like, oh man, that's crazy. His place is really cool. It's a really cool hang. And he makes really good gluten, like you wouldn't know it's gluten free if you went in there and stuff. But he has celiac, so. But anyways, he probably he's really into the horror. So
one day we're gonna take this podcast on the road.
Definitely. But all right,
Scott, thank you so much. This has been so fun.
You.
Everybody, go now to the Kickstarter. Hit the link right now in the show notes. Just donate money to Game Changers. Let's get this made. Let's get this going. This is in if you want to be like, oh, well, I want to see what Scott's done before it, then watch the Orange Years and watch This is GWAR. And like, just know that this is the quality of work that you're going to get. And this is the dedication you're going to get to what this is. And I 100% am behind this project, 100%. Everyone, this is going to be great. Let's get this moving. Manny, final word?
Let's do this. I got nothing else to say. You did it. But anyways, guys, go donate. I'll see you guys.
Scott, thank you so much again.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
And everyone, peace.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please subscribe to the Nostalgia Test podcast to know when new episodes drop. Don't forget to leave us 5 stars and a positive review so more people can find the podcast. Share your thoughts and memories on today's topic on our Twitter @NostalgiaTest and on Instagram @TheNostalgiaTest. Tune in next time because you never know what pop culture will pop up on The Nostalgia Test.